I want to welcome both candidates this morning. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate your participation. And I also want to give a big thanks. Bo is doing double duty for us today. Bo is a past chair of our Government Affairs Committee. He also serves on our board of directors for the Chesterfield Chamber. And so we appreciate him stepping up to facilitate the forum for us this morning. We have a series of questions to go through this morning. We hope to get through all of them. And these are just questions for both of you to think about and answer in your own particular positions. It's a forum, so not a debate. And Bo will navigate those questions for you. You'll have a few minutes in the beginning to do some introductions and give a little background on yourselves. And then similarly at the end, you'll have some opportunity to do some closing statements as well. Also want to thank our members that are joining and listening in. Thank you all for taking time out. Government affairs is how the Chesterfield Chamber was started and founded a little over 20 years ago, when a few business people got together and said, hey, we need a little bit more local active advocacy to help our business communities thrive and excel. I'd like to say that job is accomplished. Our business community has been strong and thriving and excelling, and it is in big part because of the work in our Government Affairs Committee. So with that, Bo, thank you again, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Danielle. We are going to go through a series of questions. There's a few topics. Generally, we'll be talking about education and workforce development, healthcare affordability, economic development and business climate, and state versus local authority. One of the ground rules that I like to kind of put out there before we begin any of these candidate forums is that please keep your remarks to the respect of your own candidacy and your own viability. As a candidate, we want to keep things positive and light and specifically based on the issues at hand. Now to begin, we will start with Mike and then go to Katie, and we will go each individual question, and then we will, almost like a tennis match, we'll go, one person gets the answer, then the other one gets the answer, and then we'll go on to the next question. Are you ready, Mike?
Absolutely, always ready.
Wonderful. Okay, the first question under education and workforce development. Can you briefly explain your overall philosophy on K through 12 education?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Danielle. Thank you for having us both. Thanks for coming out and moderating for us today. Education is a big part of my platform and what I'm advocating for here in Virginia. So let me start with this. I am on City Council in Colonial Heights, and I've always have a perfect voting record for fully funding the public schools here in Virginia, in Colonial Heights specifically. And that is both our operating budget and any special projects that have come up. So I'm a big supporter of public education. I'm also for school choice, and you may think those two things are incongruent and they don't necessarily match up, but the plan I put forward actually addresses two issues. Number one, it increases per student funding, as well as addressing the second issue, which many of our schools are facing, which is overcrowding. And so I think school choice is a great way for parents to have opportunities for their kids. I see the value in that every single day and what we're being able to accomplish at the school that I'm head of school at, as well as that being made available to every parent in Virginia. So I am very much about education. It is the primary thing that I'm running for, is to make sure that we have a strong education system. And again, that starts with both supporting the public schools and looking at school choice options to see how we can make just everything better for parents and give them the most options and choices.
Thank you. Katie, are you ready?
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
So I spent most of the last 22 years of my life as an education advocate, as I am the mother of two children on the autism spectrum. And disability education brings additional difficulties, but that 22-year-old I raised for 12 years on my own. So public education is a core value for me. Not only does it allow those from economically depressed backgrounds to achieve equity within their knowledge base and their background, but it provides accessibility for neighborhoods. I believe in fully funding public education, and that means fully funding. That means making sure that our teachers are paid above the national rate so that we can retain and keep the best talent here. That means making sure that our students have a seat in every school. In this Commonwealth, we have an interesting localities match for funding in education, and I would like to change the way that we allocate funding. It leaves many of our students at most need with the lowest per pupil funding provided by the state, because we are relying on what the localities can provide. So I would like to change that funding model and ensure that we are allowing those communities that have been left behind by the localities match to thrive, and making sure that we're allowing all students to thrive. And that means students with disabilities, that means students from economically depressed backgrounds, that means students who might have different dreams, different goals, but that also means a comprehensive liberal arts education that allows for students to find what it is best for them and move forward in that path. Creating comprehensive mental health and wraparound supports within our schools is also a central tenet of my campaign.
Wonderful, thank you. On to the next question. Are you in favor of getting rid of SOLs, or standards of learning? What is your plan to get us away from teaching to the test and focusing more on teaching to content and or curriculums?
Are you going to switch order, or are we going to go the same order through the whole thing? Sometimes they flip back and forth. Just want to make sure I'm going the right order if you want to.
Why don't we alternate? I think that was probably a little bit more appropriate. Katie, would you like to lead us off with this one? And do you need me to read it again?
Sure. No, I'm okay.
Wonderful.
So there is a federal standard that we have some amount of testing. So making sure that we are meeting that standard is important. But I do believe that we have to greatly lessen the number of testing that we require for our students. So I think first off, it's a huge money drain. We spend an insane amount of money to proctor and provide this testing through third-party services. So eliminating any of the ones that are excess. What I would love to do is make sure that we are allowing teachers to build curriculum that builds better both, citizens and, we're always concerned about whether or not our children find workforce development. And it's important that they have employment and they have goals related to that. But it's also important that they have civic and social and emotional learning as well. So that it comes from taking away from the test. And we do know, again, as a parent of a child with disabilities and someone who's worked in the disability advocacy field, we do know that children with disabilities tend to underperform significantly on these tests. We also know that standardized testing has been shown to be racially biased and provide a different standard for many different communities. It also, right now, we are basing a lot of our funding off of whether we can pass those tests. And that actually takes the resources away from the schools that need them the most, because they're not able to get to learning to a reading level or to a math level. So I think that we've done it without testing for years. It wasn't until No Child Left Behind that we began to really significantly test our students. We can assess. Our teachers know what our students need. Our educators, our administrators, they're very aware of where the gaps are. And so we need to get back to that system where we are able to count on our community to build itself and to identify its needs and make sure we're meeting that. I don't think that a third-party test helps us tell that. I think that we already know, and our educators know that well. So we just have to make sure we're meeting those needs. And instead of spending the money on the testing, we're spending the money on getting folks and the resources they need to get our students to a good point in learning, whether that's reading, whether that's math. And I think we can do that. We know how to do it. We've had the model before. We've done it for years. And we just have to kind of go back. That's one of the places that I think we need to go back instead of forward.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Mike, do you need me to reread the question, or are you good?
No, I think I'm good, Bo. Thank you so much. This may be one of the few places that my opponent and I will actually agree, in that we are testing entirely too much. I do think that we definitely need to look at how we're doing education again today. Having, as I said earlier, been a big proponent of education in general, both public and private, I think we do test too much. I would also like to see us go to a different testing model. So instead of it just being the one end of year test, I think a pre-test, post-test type scenario is much better, because you get to see the progress of that individual student throughout the year. So you test them on day one, you see what they know, you test them on day 170 and see what they know. And now you can show progression of that student throughout the school year, and not just the one test at the end of the year, not having a benchmark for what they came in with for that year, because it could be that they could know everything that they needed to know for that year already. And then what did you learn? Nothing. You spent a year of them sitting in a classroom just being talked at, preached at. The SOLs are just regurgitative learning. So that is the lowest form of learning. I teach it to you on Monday, you regurgitate it to it on me on Friday, and then by the next Monday, you have dumped it out and you don't remember anything. There are no critical thinking skills that are aligned with the SOL testing. And so when we talk about preparing students for life, we have to get away from this model of just passing a test just to pass the test. And as Katie said, you've got to look at, tying it to funding, tying it to that, tying it to student or teacher retention, tying it to tenure. All of those are bad models. Teachers need to teach because they love to teach and they want to teach, and it can't be tied to just the test. It has to be tied to preparing these students for life. And so, again, I do think we test too much, and I do think we need to change the model of testing to show progression during the year.
Thank you. Okay, on to the third question. Mike will lead us off. Virginia mandates 2 industry credentials for students when they graduate high school. How does that play into testing?
Say that again, please, Bo.
Virginia mandates 2 industry credentials for students when they graduate high school. How does that play into testing?
To be honest with you, I'm not aware of what those credentials are. And so I am reticent to say what that is. I'm not familiar. Okay.
Katie, would you like to answer that question, or do you want me to read it again?
No, I think that what we need to make sure that we're doing, I'm actually a little unsure of the basis of this question as well. I don't know if we're looking at how we issue diplomas with the seals. Is that what we're looking at in the background of those seals, whether they're Are you sure, Mark? I'm confused as well. Maybe not aware, or just maybe misunderstanding. I'm not certain.
Yeah. So I think what the essence of the question is attempting to get at is how does this move towards industry credentialing in terms of things like if you go and you get credentialed to work in like the general contracting field, how does high school essentially work its way into credentialing in the labor force? And I think that is kind of the focus of how do we get skills in high schools that can permeate a labor force without kind of the traditional go to college idea that is kind of being asked of the education industry.
Yeah, so that makes a lot more sense there, Bo. Thank you for the explanation. If it's okay, since we have a little more clarification, I'll pick that up if it's okay, and then obviously I'll pass it back over through you to Katie. But absolutely. This is one of the things that I've definitely advocated for, is getting trades back into high school. We've abdicated that for many years now. Everything has been driven towards technology. And though I love STEM and I love what STEM brings and does, we are leaving out a lot of students that may not have an aptitude for that, and that may have an aptitude for carpentry or plumbing or working on HVAC or some of those other things. So I think absolutely we should get into allowing that to be our model and helping kids to be ready for the workforce when they graduate. A couple years ago, I went to the Virginia Secondary School Principals Conference, and the gentleman who was heading up that conference literally said, we as public school principals are not producing a product that the workforce can use. And so when he said that, it really challenged me as a high school principal. What I do every day is, are we preparing kids for the future, for the workforce? And the answer to that is no. And so we absolutely need to do everything we can to promote those things. And if that's through this credentialing model you're talking about, as part of their high school education, I know that's what they do in Germany. Germany is one of those countries that in education, when you go to high school, you're actually preparing for whatever job that you're going to have pretty much for the rest of your life. And so they start that training early, not making you take courses that you may never need or things that you may never need to know, but that you're preparing for life. And I think that's important. And I think that's what education is supposed to be about. And so absolutely, I would advocate for allowing that, encouraging that, and funding that.
Thank you. Katie, do you need me to read
No,
the question?
no, I'm good now. Thank you
I know,
so
we're
much
a little
for the
confusion on that. Sorry.
So yeah, it's interesting that Mr. Cherry brings up Germany. My partner is a German educated gentleman. I will also say they have universal pre-K. So they start earlier. They make sure that children are prepared for school, that they are ready to read. And they focus on play-based learning that helps them develop young social and emotional skills, again, beyond those hard skills. I am a huge labor advocate. I grew up in a very industrial area. We had programs in my high school, not just a joint vocational school that taught everything from cosmetology to tool and die. But we also had something called OWE, OWA, which stood for Occupational Work Experience, where you could actually basically intern as part of your school credits. What I do think is imperative is that it is student and community led. It is not corporate. And it is not, while we can take input from our business community to know what skill sets are growing and where the needs are, I think it's really important that we're not catering to the specific skill sets of specific industries that may or may not be there when our students graduate. I also think it's important that we don't start those tracking or those degree programs until later. It allows our students to grow and learn within the school system young. I think my concern as a parent of children with disabilities, again, is that children with disabilities are more likely to be tracked into those fields, which may or may not suit them. So making sure that we are providing opportunities for each individual student to develop and be assessed and overcome any barriers that might have been there early on in life before we are placing them into pathways is very important to me. I also think that the credentialing system currently it could allow for some more flexibility, making sure that our students are getting the education that best serves them. Now, I do, again, believe literature teaches empathy, art teaches spatial reckoning, everything that we learn, science, it teaches critical thinking. So those skills are very important and they should be present very early on. Now, if in high school we start to develop and we see my pathway is not this or my pathway is not that, and I feel that this is not beneficial to me. And the students and the parents are leading us towards that. I will say that I do believe the labor force already has the system that we need. Germany is also a very strong union area and has very strong worker rights and worker protections. And a lot of those programs are actually run by labor apprentice programs. And I think bringing in our labor apprenticeships and workshops and allowing them to work through the high school to present our children with those opportunities is a great idea. I do think it works very well. It's an educational model we've seen around globe, and it does work, but it does start later, and it is labor-based and student and community-based, not industry-based.
Thank you. Okay, and then our final question in education and workforce development is a bit of an extension of the last question in the sense that talk about the importance of continuing to support the training centers and programs like the Community College Workforce Alliance and other community college programs.
Oh, I'm first on this one. Okay.
Yeah, so you want to go first.
So yes, certainly. I think that working with our community colleges to, again, ensure those pathways are available to students that they suit. I know a number of really great welders, tool and die makers that have done those jobs since youth. I just lost a friend last year that started cosmetology in high school and loved it. It was her life and her business, and it allowed her to thrive both financially and emotionally for years. So opening up those pathways and making sure that students have access to those programs and continuing to support them is absolutely something that I value and will uphold as a legislature.
Thank you. Mike?
Absolutely, 100%. Those are programs that work. Our school actually partners with John Tyler Community College, soon to be Bright Point, here in Chesterfield County. And it allows our students the opportunity to dual enroll, both in classes with technical training, whether that's HVAC, plumbing, agriculture, welding, all these other courses that they have available. And depending on where the student comes from, that's actually maybe paid for by someone else and they can go for free. So if you're at Dinwiddie County and you're taking certain classes that you're dual enrolling with John Tyler, the county actually picks up the tab for you. So there's definitely ways that these programs are working. I think it's absolutely awesome that we have them because not every student's going to need a 4-year degree to do what they need to do. And we need to offer pathways and opportunities for them to get the training they need to be part of the workforce, to be a vital member of our community. And these things absolutely work, and I absolutely support them.
Thank you. And before we move on to the next section here, I'd like for each of you to now that you're warmed up, to kind of introduce yourself for a minute and talk about maybe a few of the things that are in your background, and then we'll move on to the next set of questions. So, Mike, do you want to lead us off on that?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks again for the opportunity to come and to hang out with you guys for a while. Obviously, the chamber is very important to our local businesses, and I appreciate the opportunity to meet with them. A little bit about me. I'm originally from North Carolina. I joined the military when I was 18 years old. I served 20 years as what's called an aircraft loadmaster. And so I got to fly on heavy equipment cargo planes, 141s and C-17s to 6 of the 7 continents, about 75 different countries in service to our nation, and had an absolutely incredible time. As you get near Veterans Day, which is coming up here shortly, everyone wants to offer a thank you for your service. And it's really hard to take a thank you because it was so much stinking fun to get to go and do the things I got to do. I ended up as an airdrop specialist. So all of the cargo and equipment coming out of the back of the airplane is how I ended up here in Virginia. I landed at Fort Lee in 2004 and retired from there in 2011. Upon my retirement from there, after a year of civil service, I actually became a full-time pastor. And that's what I do now. I'm a staff pastor at Life Church. I am also a Christian school administrator, head of school at Life Christian Academy. Love the opportunity we get to serve there, a majority minority community. And we run about 270 students in our school, fully accredited pre-K through 12th grade. And so love what I get to do there. I'm married. My beautiful wife, Teresa. We've been married for over 30 years. I've got 2 great kids, Jonathan, who's married to Michaela, gave us our first grandbaby, Jovi. She'll be 4 on Halloween. And then my daughter, Madison, is actually a teacher at my Christian school as well. So love the opportunity to get to interact with her on the daily basis, as she is an educator now. I continue to serve my community in many different ways. I do that through city council. I am an elected official here in the city of Colonial Heights, and I'm serving in my 2nd term as a city councilman. I am also a volunteer police chaplain. I serve with our local police force. And so that leads me to the things that are important to me. We've already talked about education in this forum. It is the number one plank in my platform of what I think is important for Virginia and how we need to support parents who are choosing to get involved with their kids' education. There are some within the political spectrum today that think that's not important, I think that's very important, that parents have an opportunity to be a part of their kids' education and to help shape and mold what they're learning, how they're learning, and in what format that's going to take place. Number two is safe communities. As a volunteer police chaplain, I see every day the challenges that are faced by law enforcement. I think we need SROs in school. I think that makes our kids safer to know that there's someone there that will protect them. There was a video recently out from Meadowbrook High School where an SRO literally used his body to shield a student that was being attacked. And I just think that's very important for the safety and security, not only of our schools, but our community, that our police forces need to be funded, that they need to be held accountable, and that they need to be well prepared for any eventuality of what's going on in society and the dangers that they face every day. And then the third thing is our businesses. We need our businesses back open, working. We need to get rid of as much regulation as we can that hampers business growth and development. We need to protect right to work because it is a business model that works. And if Virginia is the number one state to do business in, which MSNBC recently said it was, why would we want to get rid of the protections that made it number one and to change it into a different model where people are forced to join unions in order to work? And so I'm grateful for the opportunity again to come hang out today, share a little bit with you about my thoughts and visions for Virginia. And I'm Mike Cherry.
Thank you. And Katie, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us today, for offering us this opportunity. My name is Katie Sponsler, and I am the Democratic nominee for the 66th District in Virginia's House Delegate. I was born and raised in Youngstown, Ohio, the fifth of 7 children. My father was a union auto worker, and my mother was a church secretary. I am a veteran of the United States Air Force, a former park ranger with the National Park Service, and a mother to 2 children on the autism spectrum. My platform is based around the experiences and the stories that I hear within this community and that I've spoken to folks about. So I think that we build from the same value system often, but we sometimes build in different directions. My father was able to provide food for 7 children and 4 of my parents' siblings when their mothers both died young because of union policies and union fought for protections. I know that I had classes every year because of the unions. So I do support workers' rights. I do support building a strong labor force that has security and safety in their workplace, as well as fair pay and fair wages. I do believe that education is the key to advancement and that it must be equitable and fully funded and public across the Commonwealth. That means ensuring that places in our most rural areas and in our most urban areas are not left behind because the localities match, that they can't compete with. I think that it's imperative that we build an education system that is inclusive and that teaches our children to respect and care for each other. And as a former park ranger, what I did with the Park Service for 4 years was law enforcement. I suppose was a fully commissioned federal law enforcement officer. I went through 3 police academies and was certified as well in Ohio State. My background and my education are in criminal justice. I do believe that safe communities are built within the community. I believe in wraparound services. I believe that crime should be treated at its root cause, which is frequently poverty and mental health and addiction. So ensuring that we're providing those services. I do believe that the people that work within our police system are amazing individuals, and 99% of them are good. But frequently the system does not allow them to act in a manner that is most consistent with equal and fair justice. So providing the opportunities for them to do so is important to me. Making sure that we provide a justice system that works for all of us. Not only keeping our communities safe, but keeping our officers safe through things like training and investing in our officers themselves. I think that it's imperative as well that we deal with clean air and water. In this community, we have some of the highest asthma rates in the country. I think it's important that we are dealing with why that is. We are looking at the root of environmental justice and things like the giant landfills that do create a huge methane dump into our immediate surrounding area and traffic congestion here, and built most frequently around our lowest income schools. So ensuring that we are providing clean air and water to everyone, from those who enjoy fishing in it to those who need it from their well. I am Katie Sponsler, and I am running on a platform that involves my community and making sure that justice is served to all of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to have you lead off, and we're going into healthcare affordability. This next question is it's a singular question, but I think it's can be fairly broad. A significant issue facing businesses is rising healthcare costs. One way that companies can combat healthcare costs is through group insurance plans. Do you support the expansion of group insurance plans like multiple employer welfare arrangements to make healthcare more affordable?
I think anything that addresses our growing cost of healthcare affordability, or growing cost of healthcare, is important. So I support a number of policies across the board on that. Anything that provides, as long as it's quality and accessible healthcare, I think that's a really important part of it as well. But we can provide that through also certain overhauls within our insurance system. We find frequently that it's difficult for especially small employers that are new. I know that as a campaign, I provide healthcare to my 2 staffers, and it's hard to negotiate those plans. I'm not a medical billing specialist. That's not what I do. So figuring out that how to best provide my employees with quality healthcare is important, and it's difficult. So making sure that we are creating a system where employers are provided the resources they need as well to provide the best healthcare at the lowest cost. I do believe that healthcare should provide care, should prioritize care, not profit. And so moving towards a system that allows that to happen. I'm a lucky and grateful beneficiary of VA healthcare. And I know that I never get told I don't get a test because it's not covered by my insurance. So I want to make sure that my community has the same thing. I do feel also, as well, that one of the things we need to look at as a state is providing within the Commonwealth paid medical and paid sick leave and family medical leave within our system, and providing insurance through the Commonwealth like we do for unemployment. We've seen in this pandemic that it's very expensive to our communities when individuals can't afford to take off even though they're not feeling well, especially when they are public facing. That creates a significant spread within our lowest income communities who can least afford to pay those healthcare bills. And that does eventually cost us economically much more than providing the care to allow somebody to take a day off because they have a fever and a cough.
Thank you. Mike, do you need me to re-ask the question?
Yeah, please.
Over the past, a significant issue facing businesses is rising healthcare costs. One way that companies can combat healthcare costs is through group insurance plans. Do you support the expansion of group insurance plans like multiple employer welfare arrangements to make healthcare more affordable?
Yes, absolutely support that. I know for many small businesses, it is very difficult for them to get plans that are small enough for their number of employees. I've dealt with this as, in essence, a small business owner running, if you want to call the school a company that has about 40 employees, and trying to be able to provide that in light of some of the laws that we're facing nowadays. It's very difficult. And so allowing companies to come together and work together to lower those costs, I think, is absolutely vital for good business practice, as well as for the health and safety of our community. And so absolutely, I would support that, businesses being able to band together, group together, and to get lower the healthcare costs for the company and for those individuals that need it the most.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to economic development and business climate. Over the past several years, we've seen Virginia adopt a number of clean energy policies that increase costs for businesses. How do we balance environmental stewardship with competitiveness competitiveness of Virginia's economy?
So definitely this is something that's on the horizon and what many people are talking about when we're talking about cost spiraling out of control. The last question obviously was about healthcare and the cost spiraling out of control. And now here we are, we're talking about energy and the costs are spiraling out of control. And I think it's directly related to some of the policies that are being voted on and implemented in Richmond. It's getting more expensive for businesses, but it's also getting more expensive for individuals. Latest study I read said they're expecting the cost of energy to go up $800 for a family based on some of these mandates that are have been passed through the Green New Energy deal here in Virginia. And so I think it's definitely something we need to look at. And I think we take an all approach. And by that, I mean the fact that we should use every available energy source, whether that's coal, whether that's natural gas, whether that's wind, whether that's solar. I think all of them contributing to our energy needs makes it easier for everyone to have access to it. It makes it more affordable by using technologies that already exist. Coal has gotten cleaner and cleaner and cleaner, and it's gotten a bad rap through the environmental groups, but yet it has provided and sustained so many for so long. And I don't think it's something we need to necessarily go away from. I think we need to balance our approach, because if we go all into the green energy idea, we can just look no further than Texas last year that had a massive failure of their power grid when unseasonably cold weather froze all of the windmills and caused all sort of, they were literally minutes away from the entire grid collapsing in Texas because they moved in this direction of all clean energy. And so I think we need to take a balanced approach. I think it needs to be an all approach, and every available source for energy should be used where appropriate.
Thank you. Katie, do you need me to re-ask the question?
No. So I think balancing environmental stewardship and the lifestyles of every human being on this planet is something that we work at every day within the Department of the Interior, so I'm pretty well versed in it. I will say that one of the things that we need to understand is that clean energy it's something that we have to do. I know it doesn't necessarily, no one loves changing a model, especially those who have profited from the previous model. I'm certain farriers were incredibly disappointed when the automobile became accessible to every human being on the planet. So I think that we have to recognize that industry moves, industry changes, and that as we learn more, we do things differently. So we are learning what carbon burning or what carbon producing burning has done to our environment. We are seeing significant and costly impacts of that, from inland flooding to large wildfires, to simple warming within our communities and extreme weather changes. Hurricanes are very expensive. What happened, I will just state, while my policy does provide the resources for businesses to adapt, and does require that the largest of those industries, such as Dominion, would create and put that money that they are holding back from rebates, which we are paying some of it back. That took a long fight, though, that we are actually investing that in changing the way that we do energy, because it's imperative that we do so. Coal, no matter how clean it gets, is still a carbon producing fuel. I can take a kayak trip down the James over by the Dutch River Station, which I do frequently, and the water sparkles, that is arsenic and mercury, that are created as well as carbon. So making sure that we are creating a community that is safe includes environmental safety, and ensuring that our communities are not especially disproportionately impacted. That cost us more in healthcare cost. It cost us more in infrastructure rebuilds as we have to adapt to things like higher water levels and a changing water table. I'm also from an area where fracking became very common. And I can tell you, no one drinks their water anymore there. And many farmers in the agricultural community were deeply impacted, and their soil is not safe for them to grow in anymore. I do appreciate that some people feel like that rate payment will automatically go onto the consumer. It does not have to, and it shouldn't. I will also say that things that have been misinterpreted, Texas decided to take itself off the national grid, as well as the fact that less than 10% of its power is actually produced by wind. What happened was excessive deregulation through legislators that were essentially paid off by energy companies to allow deregulation so that they could cut corners. And that is one of the reasons that I stand for not just clean energy, but clean finance and campaigns.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Katie, you'll lead us off here. How do we recalibrate policies aimed at protecting workers' rights, particularly around worker classification, to ensure that entrepreneurship and business growth are not stymied?
Worker misclassification is a huge problem. We see a significant level of wage theft in the Commonwealth. So ensuring that those workers are fairly compensated for their pay, and that hits our immigrant communities the hardest. So ensuring that we are properly paying individuals for their labor, it's a matter of dignity. It's very important to me. Now, there are certain industries that we are able to and should be writing exceptions into those rules, because they do rely heavily on 1099 contractors, and that is the way that works and makes sense. It is not a matter of wage theft and intentional misclassification, which also costs taxpayers billions of dollars every year in the Commonwealth in unpaid taxes. So ensuring that we are providing both the opportunity for those industries to continue. I know the realtors bring it up, and it makes sense that realtors are 1099. But utilizing labor brokers and consistently misclassifying workers, in particular in our labor career fields, whether that is the individuals that do the road work or build the buildings, it is a very important issue that we need to address, because again, that is money that is taken out of our economic stream. It does not get put back into, and when we take it away from workers. I do believe in a bottom-up economic system, and I stand strongly for that. But there are some industries that exception is viable and should be written into code and should be considered, which is why everyone should be at your table when you make those rules.
Thank you. Mike?
I think this has been an issue in the past where workers were obviously miscategorized and weren't paid fair wages for the work they were doing. I am concerned about the idea that the Democrats were really trying to get rid of all contract availability and making it so you had to be considered an employee of the company in order to work there. She mentions realtors. There are others, many in the construction industry, that work as subcontractors and contractors that work without a parent company necessarily over top of them. And so I want to make sure that we're protecting those workers as well. I think anytime you use a broad brush to put a coat of paint on something, you're going to cover things that shouldn't be covered. And so I think we need to be really judicious about it. We need to be smart about it. We need to make sure that if we're doing it right and getting the right characterizations in the right place, and protecting workers, protecting companies. And I think we're all better off for it when we do. This is another place where I think right to work obviously is going to be an industry issue as well. And are companies able to make the choices they need to make to hire and keep the employees that they need without having to pay union type wages and that kind of stuff. So I think that's very important to mention as well.
Thank you. On to the next question. Mike will lead us off. Housing prices invariably increase as economic development accelerates. What's the role of state policy in ensuring the availability of affordable housing in light of population growth?
So there's a myriad of reasons that houses go up in price. One is, as you say, as economic development happens within a community, better paying jobs create a desire for more people to own their own homes. So they move out of renting and into the idea of home ownership, the investment that is long-term. Because again, as values tend to rise over time, your money is worth more when you pay your house off in 30 years than the day you buy it. One of the reasons that housing is so incredibly expensive are the regulations that are put on the builders and what they can and can't do in building a home. And so I was recently meeting with a home builders association, and they showed me the difference in the regulations over the years. And over the course of the decade, you go back 50 years and the book is this big. And then you go back 40 years and the book's a little bigger. Well, now the book's about this big because they keep adding more and more and more regulation to how they have to build the houses. Whether that's mandating certain insulation levels and that type of stuff, but really just adding all of these things. Like there's a push now to mandate that they all have solar panels on them. Well, you can't make an affordable house if you keep mandating that they put all these bells and whistles and gadgets into a home and then wonder why you can't sell it for a reasonable price, because obviously the builder has to build it to those codes, and then they have to sell it to make a profit so that it can build the next house. And so there's a myriad of reasons why it's very difficult to build an affordable house nowadays. The role of the government, I think, is to try to limit the regulations and make it easier for them to do what they need to do to build an affordable house. And trying to limit those regulations and make it easier for them, I think, is where the role of government lies in that.
Katie?
So I think that the government, on mostly the local level, needs to start working to diversify and zone in a way that allows multiple housing stocks and affordable housing. Now, we do have an issue with cost, and there are a number of voucher programs now that allow builders to create affordable housing. I do not think that consumer protections are the issue. I think that my brothers are contractors in Northeastern Ohio. They pay union wages, and they are able, and they are union certified contractors and carpenters themselves. And they are able to make a profit. They are able to do very well, actually, even surviving the 2008 market crash with a small contracting company that builds to code. I do not think what we need to do as legislators is remove consumer protections. I think what we need to do is ensure that we are providing the opportunities to diversify our housing stock, that we are providing the economic opportunities for younger generations to actually be able to afford those. I think that we need to make sure that we are creating the banking and loan opportunities for those who may come from multi-generational lack of home ownership. Rent is incredibly, exorbitantly expensive, and a great many of those buildings are unsafe. I have lived in them for most of my life. I have had multiple buildings where I have had to be warned about lead in both my water and my paint. So making sure that we are as well providing rental protections and tenant protections, I think is incredibly important. We do know that we build wealth through home ownership. It is one of the easiest ways and most important ways to build wealth generationally. And that has become incredibly difficult for almost an entire generation. And so making sure that we are providing pathways to home ownership. And I think that does start with with diversifying our housing stock, meaning we build smaller homes. I have never needed a 5-bedroom suburban home with a large backyard. I'm quite happy with a 2-bedroom Craftsman, and it's not available. It is very, very difficult to find, even with a guaranteed VA home loan. So creating those opportunities for those who most need them to build that generational wealth, again, pays off in the long run. It is incredibly important. And I do think that protections that do things like lower housing heating cost or lower electric bills or keep our children safe from toxic pain are incredibly important and should continue to occur.
Thank you. Okay, Katie, you'll lead us off on this last one under economic development and business climate. How do we optimize the relationship between the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, and local economic development authorities and industrial development authorities to ensure that Virginia maintains its status as the best state to do business?
I think, ensuring that partnership occurs is as simple as sitting down at the table. I do think we have to continue to have those conversations. We have to continue to build and grow. But I do, again, believe strongly. I come from somewhere that did not change, that decided to stay with the same industry, and everyone leaves it now. So I can tell you that change and growth are important in industry, and we have to continue to do that. We have to recognize as the world moves forward, so do we. And we can continue to be an excellent state to do business in. We can also continue to be an open, inclusive state that provides workers protections and fair wages. And we can also be a leader in developing new energy technologies and creating new economic growth. It is a testament to so many communities that have seen their industry leave and have been able to evolve. I've seen it in Pittsburgh. I've seen it in Nashville and Memphis. And we can continue to do it. But I've also seen the opposing end where they cling to the old industry and the old ways. And that is why I was one of many to leave Youngstown in the 90s. And I think that we don't want to see that. We don't want to see our children leaving to find opportunities elsewhere. I think growing and changing is an important part of that. And I think the business community is willing to do that. And we are happy to sit down at the table and find the best way to do that together.
Thank you. Mike?
Absolutely. Working with the Economic Development Authority here in Colonial Heights on a routine and regular basis, I see the challenges that we face as a small community in trying to diversify our industry. I've actually voted in several occasions to change zoning to allow for different industries and businesses to come into the city and to work and support those people that are trying to be creative in bringing new jobs. You will die if you don't change. And so you have to continue to do that. We're really a retail-based economy here in Colonial Heights. And so that's troublesome in the idea that when you go back to 2008, 2009, and there's an economic downturn, people don't have necessarily the same disposable level of income. And so they don't go out to eat, and they don't go to the mall and shop, and they don't buy those other things that may be the extra that they would buy if they had it. And so absolutely diversification and using the economic development authorities to do that, I think is putting the right people at the table to help to lead those changes and to make those decisions and to bring the right industries to the right locations, not only for great paying jobs, but for the communities that surround them. And so absolutely, I think that's important for us to do and to support.
Thank you. Jamie, you lead us off here. We're going into a new topic of state versus local authority. Next question. 39 states, including Virginia, operate under the Dillon Rule. What's your general outlook on the future of the Dillon Rule? Do you think that Virginia should expand the autonomy of localities by allowing them to apply for home rule status?
Great question, and actually one that I have 2 points of view on, because I have served both at the local government level and now trying to serve at the state level as well. And so I have seen some challenges that come to local governments when they're trying to do certain things, and the idea that they have to go to the state first, ask permission to be able to do what they want to do. So there's some autonomy lost in terms of leading their community. The process is pretty simple for getting charter changes and that kind of stuff through the General Assembly, particularly if you have some great legislators that can work across the aisle up there, which is what I want to be. I want to be a solution-based guy and not just a partisan guy who's always voting along party lines, kind of what we've seen in the last couple of years with one-party Democrat rule in Richmond. But I also see the value of having those protections for the communities as well at the state level. So I think the Dillon Rule does work. I think it is something that should stay in place. I think it is a good way for the state to operate. As you said, the majority of states do it that way. And even having seen some of the challenges and some of the frustrations that I experienced on city council with wanting to change certain things and not being able to because we didn't have the authority from the state, I still see the value in it. I still see that it is a better way to operate. And so I would see no need to change that and would fully support that being our way of government.
Katie?
I think that we're seeing it evolve in some aspects. We are seeing that certain things we just really don't need that state regulation for. So I think we're going to see the Dillon rule evolve, but I don't see it going away. I actually agree with my opponent on this one. I think that it provides a solid kind of oversight in case any of our localities just, go a little crazy. And I think that that's a good thing. I think that making sure that what we are doing at the local level isn't going to disproportionately or harmfully impact one community, and making sure that there's just a little bit of oversight. I do think we're seeing on some issues that it just doesn't feel like that's really something that a state government needs to determine. It really is a smaller kind of issue that a locality can best determine what's best for their community. And so I do see it evolving a little bit and some tweaks kind of here and there as to what we require for the charter changes. But I think that overall it provides a nice kind of oversight and kind of a second check on any movements we see. We have seen some significant protesting and anger lobbied at local representatives in the last few years. So making sure that we are kind of protecting them by saying, it wasn't us, the state decided. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing either. I hate that our school board representatives in several localities are resigning and afraid to do their jobs because the community has become so aggressive and towards them and towards what they're doing. So sometimes when we provide a state level policy change, I think that the Dillon rule allows a number of our localities to say, we don't have an option, Dillon rule. So I think that might be a good thing in the current climate as well.
Thank you. And that was the final question. What we're going to do is I'm going to give you about 60 seconds to close it out and say anything that you'd like to get across before we end this. I want to thank you both very much for being here. Thank you both for running for office. It requires a lot of your resources and your time. And we thank you on behalf of our community that you're both taking the time to do this out of your lives. So thank you. And we'll start with Katie on the closing 60-second statement.
So I just thank you so much for having us. I do just want to finish out by saying that in every room, in every conversation, I know when I may or may not have a room that is friendly to me, a place that is comfortable to me. But I will always show up. I will always answer the questions. And I will always tell you what the value is at the root of it and try to find common ground with you so that we can build together. And I think that's very important. I am a proud Democrat. I do believe strongly in protecting the people at the root of my community that build our community and that are my neighbors and friends. And those are the voices that I uplift the most. But the individuals that are different than me, that I still believe at the root, they're holding the same values. So I work very hard to find those for us. I have a running joke with my friends as an advocate. People will say, are you ready for a cross-party conversation? Have you prepared for this? And I say Thanksgiving dinner for 41 years. My family is significantly Republican back home. So I do think, though, when I build and when I build that consensus towards change and progress and growth, that I hope that we find that common value at the root of it, and that I represent those values and honestly and openly tell folks who I am and what I stand for. They don't change depending on my audience, and I'm proud to say that any audience will hear who Katie Sponsler is when they hear from me. So please, if anyone has questions or concerns or would like to have that coffee chat, please do so. Reach out. I'm happy to have it. And I'm happy to always have those conversations about policy, about where I stand and why I stand there, and who and what the value is at that root, and to hopefully find some common ground with you and build forward from it. So thank you again so much for your time this morning. And regardless of where you stand, please go out and vote. It is such an important part of our civic process.
Thank you very, very much. Mike, would you like to start your closing statement?
Absolutely, Bo. Thanks again for having us. Danielle, thanks for putting this together, in the entire Chesterfield Chamber. You guys have been an absolute pleasure to hang out with, and I am grateful for the opportunity to serve my community. I have lived a servant's life, and whether that was serving my nation in the United States Air Force, to serving my community now as a pastor and as an educator and as a police chaplain, I want to live a life of service. And so I welcome the opportunity to serve Chesterfield County as their delegate, and to go to Richmond and advocate for schools and getting education to kids that matter, and preparing them for life and for the real world, and to serve my community with the passion of supporting our law enforcement officers and making sure that our communities are safe. Our communities are not safer when we defund police. Virginia State Police is down almost 400 state troopers right now. We can't afford not to have safe communities, because that will drive away businesses. I mean, many of you on this call that may see it now, or others, you opened your business where you did because it was a safe place to do business. And so we need to make sure that we keep that. And then for you in this community, making sure that we, the government, are getting out of your way so that you can do your business. And without the burdensome regulation, red tape, and the other things that cause it and make it to be more difficult for you. And so I think that's the role of government, is get out of your way to support you and to allow you to function as best you can, to make a profit, and to invest back into your communities with good jobs, with safe places to work, and great education for our kids. And so thanks for the opportunity again to come and share. Mike Cherry, delegate candidate for the 66th district. Bless you guys. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks again. Danielle, do you have anything that you want to conclude with?
No, I just want to echo your statements to both the candidates. Thank you both for participating. It's been a wonderful hour to listen to both of you and your thoughts and views on where Virginia should be going into election night. Happy campaigning. I know you guys have plenty of door knocking left to do, and we'll see you at the polls on the 2nd.
13 days, Danielle. Not that I'm counting down, but 13 days.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.